Well, I think now is a good time to get started. I'm sure some of our panel members might arrive a little bit late, but we'll go ahead and get our program started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Nagar. I have the honor and distinction of serving as Temecula's mayor, and it's Temecula's honor, along with my colleague to my left here, Murrieta Mayor Rick Gibbs, to be able to sponsor a gathering such as this. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and then I'm going to call roll real quick. And Betsy, could you monitor the roll as I call it? Okay, you ready? Mayor Mike Nagar is here. Marianne Edwards.
Here.
And by the way, board members, there's a button right next to your microphone.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
And if it's red, it means you're on. Rick Gibbs, Mayor, City of Murrieta.
Here.
Alan Long, council member, City of Murrieta. Not here. Mary Creighton, Mayor, City of Canyon Lake.
Here.
Tim Brown, council member, City of Canyon Lake.
Here.
Robert Youssef, Mayor, City of Hemet. Not here. Shelley Milne, council member, City of Hemet. Not here. Ross Valenzuela, board member, Hemet Unified School District. Not here. Natasha Johnson, Mayor Pro Tem, City of Lake Elsinore.
Here.
Steve Manos, council member, City of Lake Elsinore.
Present.
You got to be different, huh, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Tom Thomas, board president, Lake Elsinore Unified School District.
Here.
Good to have you. Thank you. Jerry Bowman, board member, Menifee Unified School District.
Here.
Chris Tamazian, board member, Murrieta Valley Unified School District.
Here.
Julio Rodriguez, council member, the fine city of Paris.
Here.
Rita Rogers, council member, City of Paris.
Here.
Bill Holstrom, board member, Paris Union High School District.
Here.
Mark Bartel, mayor, City of San Jacinto.
Here.
Crystal Ruiz, council member, City of San Jacinto. Not here. John L. Norman, board president, San Jacinto Unified School District.
Here.
Great. Michael Vargas, board president, Valverde Unified School District.
Here.
Welcome. Ben Benoit, council member, fine city of Wildemar.
Happy to be here.
Great. And Brigitte Moore, council member, City of Wildemar. Okay, not here. So we got our roll taken care of. Before we kick things off, we have a presentation by Senator Joel Anderson of the 36th Senate District. He sent his representative, Maggie Sleeper. And I'll tell you what, let me interrupt this real quick. I want to say pledge allegiance to the flag.
Good.
Don't want to forget that one. If you'd rise with me. Councilmember Rogers from the City of Paris, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Please join me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Maggie, are you here? Come on forward.
Thank you very much. My name is Maggie Sleeper. I'm here on behalf of Senator Joel Anderson. The senator just wanted to congratulate you all on your kickoff meeting of this task force and is very appreciative of your efforts to tackle these issues and truly believes that these issues are best tackled at the local level. And any support that our office can provide, please let us know. And especially thank you to Mayor Nagar, who invited us to do this proclamation today, and I'll just read the last paragraph here that says, resolved by Senator Joel Anderson that the Regional Family, Youth, and Health Task Force and the individuals and agencies of which it is comprised are to be commended for their commitment to providing greater awareness of the issues facing our children and for their dedicated efforts to seek solutions and provide the community with the resources to manage these unique challenges on this day, April 29th, 2013. Thank you very much.
Maggie, thank you very much, and thank the senator for thinking about us and for being here in spirit. Tell him we really do appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you.
Very good. A couple of cleanup items for the task force. I've told you about your mic button, so you know that it's there. It's a good thing to know it's there in case you want to say something and it is on, and you don't want the world to know, okay? And let's see, there are refreshments for everybody outside, although we're not supposed to bring them in the council chambers. And I told you about public comments as well. If you want to comment to the panel, please fill out a speaker slip. We'll have a time after the meeting for the public to comment. Really, I have to tell you, public comment is very important. That's why we're here. Everybody here, for the most part, is an elected official, I believe. So you have the decision makers and the leaders in their respective communities. We need to be talked to. And on that note, I do want to address the panel and say, this is not a Temecula-Murrieta effort. This is a regional effort. We're all leaders in our respective communities. And so, however we can move the process forward, that's how we need to do it. So if the next meeting needs to be held at another venue because we want to engage your own citizens, I think that's a worthwhile endeavor. And if you have that interest, let us know. Again, this is a regional effort, and we're all gonna band together and tackle these things together. I'm gonna let each member have just a quick 30-second intro, because in the interest of time, managing about 24 people here on the dais can be a real time consumer. So we'll take just a quick moment so everybody can introduce themselves. But before we do that, I do want to turn it over to my colleague, Murrieta Mayor Rick Gibbs, who's also with the City of Murrieta helping to sponsor these set of task force. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Nagar. Ladies and gentlemen, some time ago, Mr. Nagar started a task force to deal with autism. And one of the things that became obvious was that there was a lot of misinformation out there, and there was clearly not enough sources of help that parents were aware of that they could go to. So I commend Mr. Nagar for starting that task force. And the success from that task force really was about educating the public, educating parents, and letting them know that there is help. So in many respects, this little task force has got very much the same type of motivation, that we know that there's some problems and some temptations that all of our children in all of our communities are subject to or prey to, but it's the awareness that might be lacking, because all of us know it's not our kid, it's somebody else's kid. So by trying to educate the public, I hope that we can do something valuable and create a public good. And as we go forward in time, I think we're all going to learn a lot, so welcome aboard.
Rick, thank you. Now I'm going to start from my right, the audience left. If our board members can take maybe just 10 or 20-second quick hit, introduce yourself, your organization, and why you feel it's important you're here.
My name's Tim Brown from Canyon Lake, recently elected to the council. One of the first things I did on the council was tried to establish what we call a youth link, a chance for young people to meet, have a chance to talk informally with members of the council. Jordan Ehrenkrantz, who's also on the city council, is in the audience, and we try to meet with the kids at least once a month and be available for them to help them fulfill their goals. Thank you for letting me be here today.
Thank you. Mary?
I'm Mary Creighton. I'm the mayor of Canyon Lake. And this is my third task force, the autism, and then we did one earlier on hospital beds and the needs that we had in this community. And I'm really happy to see this task force, because this is something that has concerned me greatly, not only hooked on games, but nobody seems to talk to anybody anymore. Maybe I'm too old or something, but every time I turn around, people come to dinner and they're email or, writing text for dinner. At dinner. So I'm happy to see this go on, and thank you for inviting us.
Ben?
Ben Benoit with the City of Wildomar, and also recently placed on the Air Quality Management Board. And I can tell you that one of the things I realized very quickly over there is how many reports we get back on the health, our overall health of the community affected by air quality, including especially kids, and how they can be even more so affected depending on where they're living. One of the recent reports we were talking about, it shows that there's one particular school in LA where a train track is literally right across the, within from here to the podium to where the trains go by at their lunchtime, and how those kids are being affected. So I find this very good that we're starting this. I think this is something I'm going to be very interested in. I hope to bring back some more information from AQMD to this board regarding some of the air quality issues that we're going to have and deal with in the area.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Thomas, President of the School Board for Lake Elsinore Unified. I'd like to thank both mayors for including us in this conference. I think that it's very important to our school board and our superintendent, Doug Kimberly, to be involved with all the communities. I think we have an awful lot we can learn from each other, and I think that may well be the best part of this, is that we can collectively solve ideas and come up with solutions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Manos, elected councilman for the city of Lake Elsinore. I am here to go ahead and hear information, and hopefully we can go ahead and pick up a few items that will help us create a well-hewn public policy, especially as it relates to our youth. And being a little bit on the younger side and going through the information here, I noticed that a lot of the video games that are listed here I've actually played. So hopefully I'll be able to bring a different flavor to the group and some insight as far as that goes. But I'm proud, happy to be here. Thank you very much for organizing this.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Natasha Johnson, the beautiful city of Lake Elsinore. Mayor Gibbs had alluded to that it's not our kid. Well, as a mother of 3 young boys, it is my kid. So I wanted to, I was very interested, and I think a regional perspective to a large problem is way more powerful than just one city, one community at a time. So I appreciate the invitation, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Holstrom, Paris Union High School District. I'm here. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Try to learn about all these safety issues and see how they blend into my district's safety policies that we have, and maybe we learn something to change these policies that we have, blend them in, and of course our students are what is important to all of us, and we want them to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julio Rodriguez, and I'm from the city of Paris. And I'm incredibly excited to be part of this task force because during my first few months on the council, we've started to prioritize living well, living healthy. And during tomorrow's council meeting, we're going to be introducing a campaign called Live Well. And so I think it's pretty great that all of us from the different cities and different school districts can come together and talk about the issues affecting our cities in specific, because sometimes there's common ground, and sometimes we live in our little bubbles at our own cities or school districts, but it's great to now be able to come here and hear each other and, like some of my colleagues said, get a regional perspective on what's going on.
Thank you, Julio. William? Oh, I went the wrong way. We got there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Nagar. Rita Rogers, council member with the City of Paris. This is my 14th year on the Paris City Council. I've also had the pleasure of serving on the Autism Task Force and being an active participant on that. I presently serve on WRCOG's Health Committee, and I'm the chair of that health subcommittee. I recently retired last year as executive director of the March of Dimes here for the Inland Empire after 14 years. So health and youth have been long-standing passions of mine, so I'm here to be an active participant, contribute, and learn from my peers on what we can do to improve the health quality of families, youth, and health in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. My colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor Nagar. Well, welcome everyone to the beautiful city of Temecula, and we have been anticipating this task force for a couple of months. We're very excited. I'm Mary Ann Edwards, and I happen to be the Mayor Pro Tem, honored to be Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Temecula. And I think one thing that I hope everyone takes home today is that our children don't live in a bubble. And where our children are concerned, there are no boundaries. There are no city boundaries or regional boundaries. Text messages take them everywhere, all around the world and all around the region. So at the speed of light, they can have 500 kids gathered in any one place. So I think it behooves us to work together to share success stories and find out what works and what has worked in other municipalities and school districts. Because together I think we're stronger and we can approach this, any issues that we have collectively as a group for the benefit of our individual cities. So thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Mayor Nagar and Mayor Gibbs, for working so hard to put this together.
Thank you. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Tomasian, president of the Murrieta Valley Unified Board of Education. Also with me here today, I have Mr. Butch Owens, who is our Director of Student Support. I too am really excited that we're all together, and thank you for bringing us together. Our kids do, not just electronically, but they drive. They get around to all of our communities, so I think it's very exciting that we're together. I look forward to hearing from the other school districts and the cities as to the great programs and activities you have, and sharing things we're doing in Murrieta so that we can come together for the benefit of our youth and families.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Bowman from Menifee School District. I'm a board member there. I'm very excited as well to be part of this task force. I've worked over 35 years with students of all ages as an educator, a coach, currently a consultant, and a school board member. So anything I can do to help continue that work and help address and get information to help address regarding these important issues, I'm all for it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Nagar and Mayor Gibbs. My name is Michael Vargas. I'm the president of Alberta Unified School District Board of Education. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is as everybody has already said, this is a fabulous way really to getting together, creating a task force and bringing multi-talents information together as a whole. I just recently retired also in November of last year as a police sergeant for LA School Police Department, so I bring some wealth in the law enforcement and the educational field. And as we used to say, I'll text you later, don't call me. So I'm really looking forward to what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Bartel, mayor of San Jacinto, and I'm here because, you know, the family unit has been under attack for years in this country, and I'm looking for ideas and answers of how we can pull that all back together and become a cohesive unit as a family. And I'm hoping to hear some ideas today that will educate my mind. I come from the older years, I guess you could say, and I remember the days of Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and all those things at home, and the, you know, the closeness of the family. And I hope that I can figure out ways here today by hearing ideas to bring that type of thing back.
Thank you, Mark.
John Norman, San Jacinto Unified School District. We're really excited to be involved in the regional aspect here, and our participation in this, we think, is going to lead to great benefit for our children. And realistically, when you take a look at, you know, we're cultivating those children out there, and sometimes because they don't speak to us, we don't understand all the problems that they're undergoing, and we might be in Mr. Bartel's situation here. We're talking Bonanza when they're talking Star Wars or something. So we're just excited to be here with all these other elected officials. That it seems like it's a really dynamic group, and we're just hoping to take back something that will benefit not just our community, but the region as well. So thank you very much.
John, thank you. And that's a good segue into what the task force is hoping to accomplish. For the benefit of the audience and the task force members, I'll give you a little idea of where we're heading, and then we're going to begin to head there forthwith. The next topic the topic we'll cover today is virtual gaming. Our next topic, which will be, we have it listed as June 13th, but I think there's going to be some conflicts with some Western Riverside Council of Government meetings, so we're going to change that. But that will be on violence and youth. We'll then go to Thursday, July 18th, and we'll cover social media and cyber safety. Thursday, October 17th, we have mental health and youth. And then on Thursday, January 16th to 2014, we'll go into substance abuse. And this is the schedule we've put together. However, I do want to inform our task force members that it is by no means exclusive. If you have some ideas, we want you to email. Everybody should have the email list, and so you can give us your ideas. The task force can go on and study as much as this task force group wants to study. There really are no limits, and so I don't want to put it in a box or put any limits on it. We'll also be creating a website so that all of us can follow it and all the public can follow it. Again, it's really important in your respective jurisdictions that your community get involved in this as well, as I said earlier. With that, I'd like to move to item 1 on our agenda. actually item 2, presentation on virtual gaming addiction, and introduce our guest speaker, Andrew Doan, Dr. Andrew Doan, MD, PhD, surgeon and author. Dr. Doan, why don't you come on forward while I continue to introduce you? I got to know Dr. Doan over the past few years and found that he is an extremely interesting individual with a very, very compelling story to tell that you really would not hear. And I think Dr. Doan's got some good thoughts on virtual gaming. He's got some presentations he wants to give us. So Dr. Doan, why don't you take it from here and take us where you want to go. I do got to tell you, a prerequisite for Dr. Doan speaking was that I asked him to shave his head, and and he was more than willing to comply. And so you're on, Dr. Doan.
You didn't have to do that. He asked me to do the same thing, and I didn't do it.
Mayor Nagar, esteemed members of the task force, thank you so much for inviting me. Actually, I love to be like Mike. That was his campaign. So I figured if I be like Mike, I'll get into the guest speaker keynote position. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to spend an afternoon talking about video games, since I spent most of my life playing them instead of doing other things that's useful. And the other heart and passion I have is for our youth, because they are our future generation that will be our doctors and lawyers and leaders in our communities. And if we are not feeding into our youth, we are going to be in trouble. A full disclosure, I am a federal employee, so I have to have the standard disclosure. So any jokes or any misspoken on my part is because Andrew Doan said it, and not of that represent the Department of Defense, Navy, or the United States government. And I'm getting over a cold last week, so if I cough incessantly, that's because I had rigors and fevers, chills last week, but this task force is so important, I'm here. So this is a picture of my family when Caitlin was in kindergarten, and it was an art show at one of her grade schools. And on the Outlook, I was at the University of Iowa in my eye surgery training, and you would say, wow, what a beautiful family, doctor family, mother's a nurse, 2 beautiful children. But there's a dark, dark side to this, and I wish that I could talk about the drawing that she made on the left-hand side, where I get to talk about the buff daddy that she drew, but that was more in recent years. But what she drew was striking. She drew her mom, her brother, and her dog at the park on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, alone, she had this big fat guy with a sad face. And the caption above it was, "This is my dad. He doesn't want to go to the park with me. All he wants to do is stay home and play video games." And me, being the addict I am, and being that the medical professional from Johns Hopkins goes, there's no clinical diagnosis for video game addiction. I look in the mirror, and I have stretch marks from the rapid weight gain. And I look at my wife, I'm like, honey, I got stretch marks. Wicked. Go back to play game, Warcraft 3. That's how sick that is. And I saw this picture, and I broke down in tears because a local TV station wanted to interview me for the book. And I saw this, and this is my son 15 years ago. He's 16 now. He's a sophomore at Great Oak High School. What a beautiful baby boy. What a precious gift. But the reason why I broke down was that this is taken in front of the computer. Here I am, a full ride scholarship. Your taxpayer dollars are paying me to go to med school. They paid me a stipend of $10,000 a month, plus full tuition worth $30,000, $40,000 a year. And here I am beta testing for a game called Ultima Online, which is one of the first multiplayer online role-playing games similar to World of Warcraft, where I devote 10 to 15, sometimes all night long, because this is my first year PhD. So it's easy to sleep in the lab. It's easy to sleep in the library. And I recognize just from the low resolution picture that the graphics and little buttons, it was Ultima Online. And the look on that face was that I was really ticked off because my wife interrupted my gameplay. The online world was happening here, but my wife went and interrupted me here so that she can document that her baby boy had an engaged father. But look at my eyes. They're not fixed on him. It's a half-cocked kiss. And I didn't even take the time to turn around to pose for the picture. I gave the child back to her, and I said, you know what? He's only a toddler anyway, he won't remember. So my journey into why I got into this thing is this is really hard for me. I have everything to lose to come out with my story and what I have to say, and very little to gain. And the book, yeah, I could sell books, but most of it can be downloaded for free on Kindle. And also, I'm on the process of dictating it completely for free on iTunes. So you can actually listen to my audiobook and listen to my voice while you drive. Anyway, so I was in the process of writing this book, and I wanted to boast about how I can manage my time in the digital age and do all these great things. I created all these businesses. I'm an MD, PhD. I made it. I had the dream life. So I was going to write this book called The Biggest 24, how to manage your time in the digital age and harness your full potential. My wife said, no one's going to read that book. One, you're not famous, and two, you're not ultra wealthy. And I said, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I started writing this book. However, the chapter on virtual gaming got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And my wife, Julie, goes, that is the book you need to write. And I go, I don't want to write that book. That means I have to be a master or the king of the addicts. Why would I want that? I want to be the master of the digital age. So what I'm going to share with you today is what I know from my research, from my clinical, my medical, my neuroscience research, and my personal accounts of addictive behaviors, the impact of virtual gaming on the mind, youth, and families, how violent media and pro-social gaming affects the mind, and then how mental illness can be hooked to video gaming. So to understand the addiction cycle, you have to look at the dopamine pathways. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that belongs to the catecholamines. The catecholamines consist of three primary neurotransmitters that we know of today: serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. In other words, just think of them as a feel-good drug. If you have too little, you get depressed. You have too much, you're spaz like me. So basically, if you are depressed, you go to the psychiatrist, they give you a pill, and it raises the catecholamines. That's how most antidepressant works, through the catecholamine pathway. If you take cocaine, it actually raises catecholamines like that. That's why you get a big high. All drugs and alcohol act on this pathway. Behavioral addictions also act on this pathway. So when we have something that makes the dopamine level goes up, it's like a feel-good drug. It's a PCA pump that you go, feels good. So what happens in the addicted cycle is when I was walking with my mentor, Rich Zerpel at Rancho Community Church. We are Celebrate Recovery leaders there, walking with people with addictions and past hurts, habits, and hang-ups. It's basically a spiritual, Christ-centered 12-step program. Usually you have an emotional trigger, something like emotional baggage, past hurt, habit, or hang-up that you're trying to heal, but you can't heal. So then you have a craving to escape that. That craving forces you to find a ritual, whatever ritual it is, smoking pot, drinking alcohol. I can't drink alcohol because I don't have the enzyme, so I'm one of those guys that turn bright red and I get really sick. Okay, so never, I cannot be an alcoholic. But plus my parents were, don't use alcohol and drugs because you're a Vietnamese immigrant. You'll be a loser if you do. So therefore, here's all the gaming you want. So that was my ritual, gaming. So when I pushed the button, I would get the dopamine rush in the head. That would then perpetuate the cycle of using, and then you feel guilty. Oh my, I just played 10 hours of gaming. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I hear the birds chirping again. And then that guilt then reminds me of how much of a loser I am. Then perpetuates the cycle over and over and over again. And each cycle gets stronger and stronger so that it becomes a reflex. And that's why the crack addict walks in the Hotel 6 room, sees the crack pipe, relapses. That's why the alcoholic walks into the bar, gets drunk. That's why the gaming addict sees the gaming computer and starts salivating. So the question is, do video games stimulate the dopamine pathway? Absolutely. I was so shocked when I found this. So in the biomedical sciences, if you look at the journal, the two journals that are prominent in the field is Nature and Science. Unfortunately, I've never received one of those publications. But in the journal Nature, they showed in 1998 in the UK that when gamers play games, it stimulated dopamine in the brain. This has now been validated by MRI scans. If you stick an MRI or head into an MRI scan of a video game addict, it lights up just like one who is addicted to alcohol and drugs. Fascinating. So technology is stimulating because, one, it stimulates brain dopamine. It's a digital antidepressant. I feel bad about myself, so I'm going to be on the online world, pushing the button, feeling good. It's a digital buffet. There's a game for everybody. If you want to be a conqueror, you play Call of Duty. If you want to be someone who's in love, you play Second Life. If you like animals, you play Farmville. You see my point? There's a digital buffet to fit the needs of the brain for anybody, anyone out there. And there's no ramifications. Unlike alcohol. If I drink too much alcohol, I get sick because I don't have the enzyme. But I have yet to find one game where if I play too much, I get sick. The other thing is there's a very short refractory period. So because we have mixed companies, I'm going to pick a refractory period that's more understandable. That means if you do something that's fun, you have to have a rest period before you can do it again. So for example, I've met a doctor who had an addictive personality in running. He ran so much, he almost destroyed himself. He became anorexic, he became sick. But most of us will not be addicted to running. Definitely not me. I can't handle running my PRTs in the Navy. So in essence, what happens is if you run a marathon and you run and you run and then you finish, you get this huge dopamine rush, but then you're like, oh, my body. I got to rest my body for 6 months before I can do it again. But gaming, you can stick there all night long and pump your brain with dopamine. So, okay, so let's take a breather here, and the reason why I want to spend some time to prove that this is a clinical diagnosis, that the AMA and the APA, the American Association and the American Psychiatric Association are so far behind because most of the leaders in medicine are of the Woodstock generation. They recognize drugs and alcohol as being a problem, but they don't understand digital worlds. Anybody younger than me understands digital worlds, but not as much as drug and alcohol, because that's not as much as the Woodstock generation where everyone used it and it was okay. It took 30 years for my profession to recognize that alcoholism is a problem. They used to blame the drunk. They used to blame the person. But now we accept it. But my point is we can't wait 30 more years. So I'm going to give you an example why video gaming should be a clinical diagnosis now. If you're labeled with the ICD-9 code 31231, that's called ludomania. Big fancy word for problematic gambling. In the state of California, if you have this code, you're qualified for 8 or 10 free sessions with a psychotherapist. Okay, so now if you look at the screenshot to the right, that's the screenshot of World of Warcraft. For those who have not played World of Warcraft, it doesn't mean anything. But for those who have, it gets exciting. Purple means elite armor and gear. That actually has monetary value. I just spent 2 hours in the dungeons with 25 people fighting dragons and getting to the end, and then finally at the end, the chest drops. And everyone's fighting and runs over and opens the chest, and all these items pop out. It's like pulling the slot machine jackpot. And then now everyone pushes that little dice and rolls and fights for the item. And guess what? These items, even though virtual, is worth money. There's $100 million in U.S. currency being transacted in the black market for these items. There are Chinese that are being enslaved to play these games incessantly to get gold, virtual gold, so that people like me in the United States can PayPal them money. They send virtual gold so we can play better and don't have to spend all the time pushing the button. So if video gaming is designed to be like gambling, why are we holding back on the clinical diagnosis? Well, the game makers got clever. If $100 million gets transacted under the black market, let's implement an eBay auction in the game Diablo 3. So now with a credit card, you can actually buy the item virtually. So this one is the Avenger's Avenger, which is a one-handed crossbow. Very exciting. That's like, I remember the first time I got like the rare item in Diablo 1 and 2. I used to play that a lot. This is Diablo 3. I haven't touched it at all. But Diablo 1 and 2, when I was playing in med school, I get the Stone of Jordan, which is like this elite ring. It's kind of stupid now when I talk about it, but I get this ring, and I'm like jumping around the house. I'm like, Julie, I got the ring. I got the ring. I got the ring. Because it's worth $10 on eBay. The ring was worth $10 on eBay. A bow like this was worth $200 on eBay. And on the virtual world, this one sold for 849,000 gold pieces. So if the transaction rate was even 1 to 1,000, $1 for 1,000 gold pieces, this thing's worth $149 or $849. And if I want to have my character to have two, I got to spend over $1,600, $1,700 just to get two bows to go in the game. Okay, so why do we turn to games? In the real world, if we don't provide purpose and challenge for our kids, they go to the virtual world for a purpose and challenge. So little Johnny doesn't have any purpose and challenge, just goes and gets yelled at, gets bullied at school. So little Johnny then turns to the virtual world in Minecraft and gets to build worlds. I get to build a mountain, and I get to challenge people, and I get to be, oh, I need a sun over here. I'm going to build a little sun over here, then a little moon. I get to play God. I'm God in the virtual world. In the real world, I'm a nobody. I get bullied at school. I get picked on for having good grades. I get picked on because I like choir or whatever. So I'm going to go back to the virtual world where I'm accepted by my peers. That's the draw. Ego, leadership, and pride, we all need it. So this is a screenshot of World of Warcraft where every single character is controlled by another human being. So in real life, Bob could be a computer programmer sitting in a kiosk, and no one ever talks to Bob. All day long, doesn't talk to Bob. But when Bob goes home, boy, he has 5 heroes ready to slay dragons with him all night long. Bob feels like a man on online gaming, but feels like a nobody sitting in a carousel all day long because we became so detached as a society, not even coming by and say, how are you doing, Bob? How are you today? Love and acceptance. There's a game where there's millions of people who play the game Second Life. So this character over here that's a woman is controlled by another woman, presumably. Sometimes a man. And the man is controlled by a man, presumably, sometimes a woman. And there are people who will play with their spouses in the same room. So that means their spouse is watching TV, and they're having romantic relationships with random people online. They're committing adultery online, but they say it's only a game, so therefore it's not. And then they get virtual marriages, virtual weddings, virtual childbirth. So write this down. Go to YouTube and search Second Life childbirth. They actually film it and put the music like they have a real child. It's a soap opera that you get to live. How about Facebooking? Okay, so this is my wife. She's not addicted to Facebook, and I got full disclosure to put her on here. Just want to let you know. But Facebook can be a game for some people. It's a great communication tool. It's a great way to keep in touch with people. But if you notice that I took this screenshot when she just turned 40. She kind of felt a little funky because she turned 40. And it was amazing because within minutes, people were saying, oh, don't worry, 40's the new 20. I'm 47, you look great. So that right there, those little public comments provide little dopamine rushes, little antidepressant in someone's head. That's why you have people who are addicted to Facebook and they post everything. Oh, I went to the grocery store. I just did this. I just fed the dog. I just bought some tomatoes. I bought this. And they're getting likes. People are liking their posts. Bam, bam, bam. And every like, dopamine. And then they get tired of themselves, like I'm not pretty because no one's complimenting me. So they take pictures of themselves, put it online. Oh, they like me. Oh, they don't like this one, so they take another picture. And then they spend all their time posting pictures up. So often I go on Facebook and test. I'll do a public message comment or public message statement, and no one likes those posts because they're too scary. But I'll put something stupid like my peanut butter and jelly sandwich post, and everyone likes that. How about texting? Texting is another immediate feedback that feeds the dopamine pathways. So when we text, we get a sound. Our brains are trained to say, oh, there's something new, kind of like, wonder what present we get today. And you look at that, and you see what's on the text. So one of my friends worked for a major telecom company as a customer service representative. She says the #1 reason why people call is because their bandwidth is not large enough for pornography. So they're getting pornographies tested right to their phone. sent to their phone, bam, 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 bam. And their bandwidth is not able to handle that. So they'll complain to the telecom companies, I want more bandwidth. So this is a huge problem when you have teenagers accessible to smartphones and where they're accessible to pornography on the phone. Now, can someone fail to have like sexting problems? Who remembers Representative Weiner? Actual name, by the way. But it's sad because, you know, his wife is working hard with Hillary Clinton, and he then starts taking pictures of himself in the locker room. He posted on Facebook, and all these women says, whoa, you're hot, you're attractive, you're so handsome. He gets all this dopamine rush, and then he starts sexting people. That's his downfall. It became an addictive cycle. But you know what? They didn't call it technology addiction, they call it sex addiction. See, they bypassed the fact that because we have this technology, we're able to get immediate feedback right away. So when I talked to Mr. Tony Rossi at Chaparral High School, he's a health teacher, and he's very cognizant of you know, what these kids are doing. He says, you know, Andy, these kids are texting inappropriate things. So instead of going up to a woman or you know, a young lady or a young man that they like and say, you know, I really like you, Sarah, and then get really nervous and build the courage to ask her out, they're just texting, will you have sex with me? Will you kiss me? Will you do this with me? And then, ooh, yeah, she will. And that becomes a dopamine rush right there. And if she doesn't, who cares? She'll just text someone else. Because there's 4,000 students at Great Oak High School. I can text all day and see who responds. So what is the actual data? So being a PhD, show me the data, right? Because I would get ridiculed if I just came up here and just say, oh yeah, it's a problem, and no data. So the data from the peer-reviewed literature is very clear. So Douglas Gentile, who wrote the foreword for my book, he's a researcher out at Iowa State, and his emphasis of study was not in gaming addiction, but actually studying the effects of violent video games and violence in kids, and pro-social games and pro-social behavior. So what he found was that when kids play pro-social games, they tend to be nicer and more pro-social. But when they played violent video games, they actually became more violent. That was his area of research. But he got into video game addiction because he wanted to see if there was a true correlation. His national study of kids 8 to 18 showed an addiction rate of 1 in 11, which is about 9%. Follow-up studies show a longitudinal follow. That means that he actually followed a group of kids around the world. Around the world, it's consistent, about 9%. That's 1 in 11. Another independent group in Greece showed the same thing, about 1 and 11, and this was just published in 2012. But what they showed here was that there was actually a huge impact on family bonding. So the more the kid used the internet, the less bonding there was in the family, and this is remarkable. See, as an addict, I know, and also walking with other addicts, we sometimes switch from one addiction to the other. The amazing thing here is that this study showed that the video gaming and internet overuse is the gateway drug for drugs and alcohol. So that means if someone uses video gaming as a child, they go to college, it may not be so cool to play video games anymore, so therefore, let's go party it up. And they start drinking or using drugs. So by ignoring the problem now in your household, we may be creating future drug addicts that are now going to be drunks and potheads in the future. And what's interesting about this data is that I then approached Tony Rossi, and that's why I think health education is so important, because that's where it starts, right? Preventative medicine, not fix it after it's been broken. I mean, it's cheaper to prevent someone to get diabetes than it is to manage their diabetes during their lifetime. So here, Tony Rossi invited me to his class, and he said, okay, let's talk to 100 kids and see what's up. And we handed out this survey, this addiction survey. It's an 11-point question survey. And what we found was 1 in 10 kids in that class had pathological gaming. And one of the kids, when you actually educate the kids, he raised his hand. He goes, I get it. My neighbor, you never see the kid. You only see the glow in the room, in the back of his head. And he also said, Dr. Doan, that child or that kid doesn't play anymore outside, and he also lost his dog because he didn't feed it. Okay, I see people are stressed out. So let's take a stretch, let's laugh. I know this is serious stuff. Chris Rowan is a social occupational therapist who does a lot of these lectures, and she told me, okay, read your audience, they get stressed, because I know we all have video games in our house. I know that now you're being convicted, and you're like thinking you're creating the next crackhead, but it's not that bad. I got good news. I got good news coming. So everyone stretch and just take a break, because if they turn out to be like me, they could be an eye surgeon. So why do addictions kill time and result in dysfunction? Well, really, you break it up into time management, right? There's non-negotiable time, time that you have to work, go to sleep, take care of yourself. There's necessary time, time with your family. There's enjoyable time. Enjoyable time is the most valuable time. It allows you to sit down and create new ideas. The problem with addiction is that the wasted time, things that don't work towards goals or towards a purpose, starts to take up most of your day. See, we only have 24 hours a day. We can always make more money. We can always create more, ideas, but we can't create more time. So the consequence of overuse of media is severe. Obesity, tobacco use, sexual behavior, drug use, alcohol use, low academic achievement, and attention deficit disorder. So Chris Rowan out of Canada, and her website is zonein.ca, she works as an occupational therapist working with kids with technology addiction. And she also gives seminars to help educators how to deal with children and to cultivate healthy children. And this is her model, and it's in your handout. And basically, kids who overuse TV, cell phone, and the internet lead sedentary, isolated, neglected, overstimulated lifestyles. That basically leads to all the medical problems that I talked about already on the left-hand side. Ultimately, what that results in is no job, no relationship, and often early death. This is unsustainable for our community. This is where we're heading, ladies and gentlemen. So Chris, so lives are lost. These are all headlines in the newspaper. So Liz Woolley is a good friend of mine. She started Online Gamers Anonymous about 10 years ago. She lost her son, Sean Woolley, to this terrible addiction. So Sean started out being a very normal young man. He was a manager for a small company. He also had a car, had an apartment. But he found the game EverQuest, which is similar to World of Warcraft. He dove more into this virtual world to the point where he got depressed. The travesty is that the clinician said, oh, don't worry, Liz. Your son's not addicted to drug and alcohol, so therefore let him play as many games as he wants, but here's a pill to take care of his depression. Sean took that as the green light to play more games. So he ended up playing literally all day long, all night long. He almost lost his apartment. So one day, Liz visits him, and she finds him shot in the head because he killed himself. Game was still running in the background, and he made a character called I Love You. She's convinced that because he lost all connection in the real world, his last thread was through this online gaming relationship, and that was then turned into rejection, and ultimately, he took his own life. So I talked to Pastor Mark Petrick about his son, Daniel Petrick, who's now in prison for trying to kill his parents. And so Daniel had an accident, an infection, so they got him an Xbox for him to play. He started first playing these pro-social games, but the pro-social games were not as fun, so he went to Halo, which is a first-person shooter. And so eventually, Daniel was so into these violent games, Pastor Petrick says, I don't want this in my house. He removed the game from his son. So the son one day walks into the living room, says, Mom, Dad, I got a present for you. Close your eyes, please. Bam, bam, bam. Shoots the mom in the head 3 times. Shoot Mark 1 time. Puts the gun in his dad's hand and walks out with just the game. Pastor Petrick actually amazingly survived that attack. And I spoke with him on the phone just months ago when I learned about his story. He goes on from there. Jacksonville mom shakes her baby to death because she was interrupted from her Facebooking of Farmville. New Mexico mom just 2 years ago, spending 25 years in prison for starving her daughter because she played World of Warcraft for 15 hours a day, and her 3-year-old daughter, just starved to death in the house. Facebook defriending can cause a lot of turmoil. Now, I'm very cognizant of that when people defriend me for my post. You know, oh, there he goes again, talks about the video games. Unfriend, you know. I don't want to hear about that, unfriend. And I know this is hard, because I've talked to parents before, and they cover their ears. They were like literally in front of me, Dr. Doan, I don't want to hear anymore. I can't hear anymore. So I understand how hard this stuff is, so I'm trying to deliver it in a way that's digestible, that you're not just in shock and walk away going, this guy's crazy. Xbox tragedy. 20-year-old died from playing too much Xbox. How? You play Xbox, you get the little digital antidepressant, you don't feel any pain, anything in your legs, you don't feel your legs going numb, you're not hungry, you're not thirsty, you don't have to go to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden you do have to go to the bathroom, so you get up, but you now have a deep vein thrombosis in your lower extremities. You take a step, that clot goes right to your lungs, and the child dies of a massive pulmonary embolism. PEs, or pulmonary embolism, are disease of the sedentary and the elderly, not of 20-year-old men. Okay, so how about rage and anger associated with gaming? And I know this is also important. I want to touch on this. The evidence is there. We just don't accept it. This was a Surgeon General report collated in 2001. The conclusion says, a substantial body of research now indicates that exposure to media violence increases children's physically and verbally aggressive behavior in the short term, within hours to days of the exposure. Media violence also increases aggressive attitudes and emotions, which are theoretically linked to aggressive and violent behavior. Findings from a smaller body of longitudinal studies suggest a small but statistically significant impact on aggression over many years. The evidence for long-term effects on violence is inconsistent. Here's the problem. The multi-billion-dollar gaming companies and media companies look at the last sentence. The evidence for long-term effects of violence is inconsistent. So they go out with that. There's no connection. There's no connection. And then you have the radical parents who are like, I know it's a problem, so they take the first sentence. There's a substantial body of research. There's really actually a happy medium, obviously, because we'd be in trouble if either one of them was, always true, right? Here's another thing. The Department of Defense has online training to teach people about domestic violence and violence in the homes. This was a test that was given to millions of Department of Defense workers, and it shows that when you have abuse in the home, the batterer learns that that's okay because they witnessed it themselves or they were part of the receiving of the battering. But guess what the second component was? Exposure to violent media, internet, magazine, etc., etc., etc. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is a retired special ops ranger from the Army. His profession is to learn how to kill. He's been saying for the last 10 years that the reason why we have kids who know how to kill is because of violent media and video games. Here's a case study. 14-year-old in Paducah, Kentucky, picks up a .22 that he stole. Fires a few shots, bam, 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 never fired any more than that, goes to a local high school prayer group and finds a group of 8 people praying, puts 5 bullets in 5 heads and 3 in the upper torso, killing all 8. When Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman tells this case study, law enforcement officials and special ops professionals are shocked that this child knows how to kill with such accuracy. There's only one place this child ever learned how to do that, was through violent media and video games. So how does a child learn these things? So remember how the other journal was the journal Science? This is a science paper published in 2000 called the Replaying the Game, the Hypnagogic Images in Normals and Amnesics. So this is a game Tetris, where you have a falling blocks, and it basically is a game where he paid gamers to play for 7 hours, and he asked about what kind of images do you get in your head. They all dreamt about Tetris blocks. This is like they go to the grocery store and you see the stack of grocery boxes or the cereal boxes, and you can actually see the outline of the Tetris blocks because you play the game too much. So there's some imprinting of the game images in the brain. But you know what's fascinating about this? It's actually the 3 subjects who had amnesia. 3 subjects had traumatic brain injury and could not recall short-term memory. They had trouble learning, but they too could recall the blocks. So he hypothesized that there's something about video games that are actually inputting data directly in the brain that's bypassing the traditional learning memory response. Scary. A person with short-term memory can remember Tetris blocks but can't remember their grocery list. So apply the Tetris effect to violent video games. If a child plays this 30 hours a day, 30 hours a week, what are they going to see? They're going to see splattered brain, skull pieces, and blood. This is a game called, from a first-person shooter. I don't know if it's Call of Duty, but it's a high-powered sniper rifle. One shot in the head, bam. Okay. So really, why have we been ignoring the data? We can't handle the truth. We don't want to accept the fact that we've done this to our kids, that we say it's okay to have mature video games in our homes. But guess what? Governor Schwarzenegger in 2010 said it's not okay. He signed a bill that says you can't sell violent video games to minors. Guess what? The gaming companies went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they argued against it. But I'm going to give you that argument. It's so false, it's ridiculous. But check this out. In 2008, 15-year-olds are hanging out Central Park, or actually in New Hyde Park, Memorial Park, didn't know what to do, so they decided to do a whole series of robberies to mimic the game Grand Theft Auto. But see, it's more than just mimic the game. The problem is when you play these games and you're killing and doing headshots, okay, let's role play this out. So I'm doing headshots, bam, bam, bam. Okay, but the thing is, I'm not really doing a headshot because all I'm doing is pushing a button on a mouse or a controller, right? But my body knows no different. My palms are getting sweaty. My pupils are getting smaller. My heart rate's increasing. Cortisol levels are increasing. My brain is bursting with hormones. So that's why when little Johnny's playing and his little brother bugs him, he goes, "Leave me alone." Because all that energy has to go somewhere. When you're an actual warfighter, you're carrying a 50-pound pack running through the desert. So you're like, okay, man, I need that cortisol. Give me another shot, But when you're a gamer, you're playing like 6 hours a day, your brain is ready to burst. So when your wife asks you, go clean the laundry. No, leave me alone. I want to play my game. You get it? It's the buildup. I'm sorry, did I scare you? This is scary here. Al-Qaeda is using game theory to recruit Americans to kill Americans. By gamifying his followers' internet experience, al-Awlaki has been able to rally a more engaged online fan club than any other hardcore Islamic extremist to date. Through the creation of an online community of like-minded individuals, al-Qaeda has mobilized these e-recruits through a natural process, competing with their peers for status and reputation. Al-Awlaki has used gamification to what al-Qaeda has been unable to do before him, at least in any systemic way: get Americans to compete with one another, to put down their keyboards and pick up their weapons. Let me play how this works. Little Johnny's at school, little geeky Asian guy, like me, and I get picked on. I find a world of guilds. Call of Duty, oh, good, Johnny, you're so good, you're so good. Johnny, you're awesome. Stay with us. Let's go compete together. So I spend 10 years playing with this world. I lose all connection to the real world. They reject me. They think I'm a geek. They think I'm stupid. My parents hate me. But this world, they accept me because there's love and acceptance and challenge and purpose. And now they go, little Johnny, go prove that you're a real man. Do it. Okay. Over in 30 seconds. The shock, kills himself, or whatever. Okay, let's take a breath. I know that was a lot. I know. Stretch, okay, this is a lot to deal with. I got to take a drink anyway because, how are we on time?
You have about 10 more minutes, 12 more
Good.
minutes right
Good.
on there?
Yes.
Is that good for you?
I'm on the home stretch.
Okay.
And I bet you people are saying, thank God we're on the home stretch. I can't take any more of this guy. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers. He says that the most common thing between all super athletes, like Michael Jordan and Terrell Davis, is 10,000 hours. You have to practice 10,000 hours. As a neuroscientist, I spent over a decade learning how memory is encoded in the brain. So when the brain encodes memories, you actually get genetic expression, new proteins expressing in your brain. So that you're literally encoding new memories all the time. This is why it's nearly impossible to unlearn something. So once you learn to ride a bike, you always know how to ride a bike because it's encoded permanently in your head. So if you want to be a good person, you practice 10,000 hours with pro social gaming. If you want to be a bad person, you spend 10,000 hours in killing games. You get the picture? So it's that simple. Don't be misled. Bad company will corrupt good character. And so if our child is spending more time in front of a screen and that's their company, why are we surprised when Sandy Hook happens? Why is that a surprise? But here's the danger. You're looking at me, and some kids go to my lecture and says, well, if Dr. Doan was a gaming addict, I want to too, because he's an eye surgeon. But here's the difference. I was addicted as an adult. When a kid is addicted as a child, it's very dangerous. The brain of a preteen brain is very sensitive. If you separate a rhesus macaque from its mother and put it in a wire mesh without any warm, fuzzy mother, you know what happens? The little monkey grows up in a little corner, all anorexic, failure to thrive. You have an orphanage baby that you don't touch and feel and hold and look at. That person is emotionally damaged for the rest of their life. You have a child who's been sexually abused or emotionally abused, that person is affected for the rest of their life. So it's something about the brain happening pre-teen affects us for the entire of our lives. But let's take a medical analogy that you'll understand. So lazy eye is when the eye does not work together. One eye's turned out. That's my field of ophthalmology, right? So basically, if the eye turns out, it doesn't send inputs to the back of the brain. The eye turns off at about the age of 10, not at the eye level, but at the brain level. The brain turns that off. So imagine this. I see little kids that are 1 year old with an iPad. The iPad's only like 1,000 by 800 resolution? This world around us is like millions of pixels. The brain needs this stimulation. The child needs to look at this, not 1,000 by 800. But the child at 1 year old is there on the iPad going like this. So tell me, after 10 years, what areas of the brain will be remaining to be underdeveloped permanently? And there are even some parents letting their 8-year-olds play Call of Duty. So what areas of empathy, areas of right and wrong, areas of impulse control, areas of creativity that will never develop? We're talking about permanent brain damage. We're talking about lazy brain syndrome. So really, this is where we have to look at, is that the researchers that went up to the Supreme Court says, okay, look at all these gamers here. They play okay. That's not a problem. So therefore, the correlation to violence is only 0.16, meaning there's only a slight association. But if you know the addiction rate is 1 in 11, you got to look at this. See, the normals dilute down the problematic ones. That's why when you dilute it down in a research study and you don't look at the affected ones, you don't get the data that tells you that video games are really bad for the mind. And the gaming companies aren't going to look at the affected ones, they're going to look at the rest of the population. So really, if you look at Temecula, 30,000 kids in Temecula, 28,500 affected or exposed to digital media, you're expecting about 2,600 kids who probably have serious dysfunction in multiple areas of their lives because of pathological gaming. The questions we need to ask is how many are failing out of life? How many are mentally underdeveloped? How many are extremely aggressive and rageful? How many are on psychotropic medications? How many have access to guns and weapons? How about mental illness? Autistic children and children with mental illness tend to gravitate towards technology. Now, I know my talk is like, swayed towards the bad side effects of technology. There's definitely good side, but you have to have moderation. But here's where the problem comes in, is when you have a family is too busy and there's too much stress and they don't have time to deal with a very mentally challenged child. So now they use the Xbox as a babysitter for 10 hours a day. That's the lethal combination. That's where Adam Lanza, who had like Asperger's syndrome and playing 36 hours straight of video games is not a good idea. So solutions, we need parental education, we need parental engagement. For example, Caitlin and I, my daughter, 14-year-old daughter, takes a coffee date every Thursday morning. She gets up early, we go, and the hour is there for her to You know, tell me what's going on. And sometimes when I get bullied by my professionals saying that I'm crazy about my theories, then I cry on her shoulders. You know, it's a good time. You have to have community, school, athletic, social programs. Why are we cutting them out? What use it is to have a 4.0 student only to fail out of life because they can't unhook from video games. I've seen so many straight-A students, even from my church, National Merit Scholars, to go off to college to flunk. One of the reasons why I wrote my book is one of my good colleagues sent his son off to college to get D's and F's because they played World of Warcraft incessantly. Flunked out twice. We need to provide real opportunities for challenge, leadership positions, love, and acceptance. And then how about mandatory screening in our health classes? Let's hand out that survey and see who the problem ones are. And then let's pull them into a system for help. So can we really afford to wait for more data? This is a gamer who died in an internet cafe. He has rigor mortis and no one even noticed him. They're all too busy playing on their digital crack. Can we afford to wait for more research? Here's Adam Lanza, and they find out that he had a high score sheet similar to other gaming score sheets. The data only confirm what we already know. And what a great pleasure it is to honor my family, because me being a digital crack addict also made my family digital crack addicts. But through my wife's love and firmness and my intervention, for example, my son used to be addicted to Call of Duty, but we cut him off completely. We locked down all the computers. Guess what? His grades went from below 3.0 to above 3.5. He now is, he lettered in varsity soccer at Great Oak High School at sophomore, and he ran track for the first time this last season, and his 800-meter time is 2-minute flat, which places him in the top 25 of all sophomores in the state of California. And I can guarantee you that would not have happened if we didn't cut down his game time. Caitlin, my 14-year-old, used to get so involved in Facebook. I'd come home and my head would be spinning about all the drama that happened on Facebook. And being an addict myself, I said, okay, stop. You don't need this. It's not enhancing your life. She's flourishing now, so she's not bored and looking for things to do on Facebook. She's actually, when she's bored, she sings. And she made advanced choir as an incoming freshman into Great Oak. And my little daughter, Emily, I mean, what a godsend, because she's like my video game addiction detector. So when we're at games and public events, she'll yank on my coat, Daddy, video game addiction. And I'm like, shh, they're not ready. We can't talk to them there. But Emily, because I have a second chance with this little one because we adopted her from South Korea. I messed up the other two, right? So now I have a chance to do it right with this one, and guess what? She's the best reader, or one of the best readers at Rancho Christian Schools. She is also the Student of the Month last month. She reads all over the place. I can't even spell out anything anymore. She'll sound it out and say, uh-oh, Daddy said that. And then, of course, my marriage. 14 years ago, I was going to take a life. I was going to kill myself, or I was going to kill my wife. But my wife was smart. She left with the very clothes on her back and took my son, who was 2, and my daughter, who was 1, and left 3,000 miles away. And she slapped a restraining order on me. Literally, I was ready to kill myself at that point. I lost everything. I was second year in med school, 2 more years in med school to go. And I just laid there, and I was an atheist at the time, and I just said, you know, if there's a God, please redeem me, and I will serve you the rest of your life, or my life. But I guess he kept his part. Now I'm here to do mine. And so instead of my free time being in the digital world, I poured into my family, my marriage. Now we're going to be close to 17 years in marriage. I pour into my children, so now my children can flourish and be productive citizens in this community. I created a new eye clinic with Dr. John Kaysen and Dr. Sage Patel to serve the rescue mission at the church. So we built an eye clinic called Eye Associates in Southern California, providing new jobs for people in Temecula. Through Daniel Hunt as being my CEO and meeting Jeffrey Frischner and Tom Termini and Devin Termini, we created a new startup company to compete with Yelp to provide online reputation services for doctors. We brought an internet company here to Temecula. So see, the power of not playing in the digital world is incredible. We actually can be productive citizens in the real world. And not only that, I volunteer every Thursday to work with Rich Zerpel at Rancho Community Church to walk with people with addictions, hurts, habits, and hangups in cell recovery. So what's interesting is that I didn't expect to put this slide in, but I announced my talk on Facebook through my gaming page, and boy, the lashback. When you threaten the digital crack, look at that response. but I love the data. I'm like, what a blessing. This young gentleman, a teenager, but look at the language. It's incomprehensible. It illustrates the illiteracy that Chris Rowan was talking about. Spend too much time in the digital age, you can't learn to communicate. And my question is, will he ever be able to learn? Because the brain forms permanent connections after the age of 13 or so. Another one, can't, so shut the what up, because I can't find anything else for him to do. So they just want a game. Let's see, what do you say here? Piss off and enjoy the game. Okay. And then, Dr. Doan, I think you need a new hobby. I wish I had a new hobby. It's not fun sitting up here and tell you all my past mess-ups, right? So trust me, Nicholas, I wish I had a new hobby, but I feel bad for these guys because I know their positions. So how can you guys help me? So if you have any gaming addiction stories, fill out the review forms and let me know. And anybody in the audience, fill out a review form and let me know, because I'm collecting data through Amazon reviews and through verified reviews, which is what we created through credential protection, to basically tell the story of gaming addiction. I can write a peer-reviewed research paper and argue against my medical professionals who deny it, say, listen, I have 10,000 stories here. It should be an addiction. So thousands of years ago, there's a proverb that says, one who is full loves honey from the comb, but to the hungry, even what is bitter tastes sweet. Let me play out what that means. So little Johnny's on the phone looking at pornography. His first date, he got to go all the way. Touching and kissing is not enough because he's already, look at the hardcore stuff here. You see what I'm saying? So therefore, if little Johnny is spending time killing people all the time, out in the real world, playing football and wrestling and baseball is not enough. He may have to bully someone to the point where they commit suicide. He may have to go to Facebook and bully somebody to the point where they're crying and emotionally wrecked. They have to up the ante because the dopamine rush, the brain develops tolerance, forcing us to do greater and bigger things to get the same rush. I don't know if this quote was from Einstein, but it's gone viral on the internet, but it sounds good and is appropriate for my talk. So Einstein presumably said, and I don't think he did, but he says, technology will surpass human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots.
Dr. Doan, if you just hang around real quick, I'll sort of lay out how I think we should proceed. I wanted to keep us on a 2-hour timeline, make sure everybody gets home at a decent hour. And so that has us finishing up at 6. So I'm going to open it up to questions of the panel of Dr. Doan, but I'm going to ask the panel to pepper those questions. And Dr. Doan, I'm going to ask you to pepper back responses. So quick questions, quick responses. My colleague, just raise your hand too, and we'll start with my colleague, Marianne Edwards, then we'll go to Councilmember Benoit.
This is really eye-opening, and just the little bit that when you spoke to the council that night really opened my eyes, because we've not had this at our home, and I don't really have any experience. But as someone who works with hundreds of children every day, and they're not allowed to play video games or bring in their toys after school or before school, how would you recognize this in a child that isn't going to have a machine in his or her hand?
Oh, you can talk to them. So it's amazing. You just say, what do you like to do for fun? And I do. I go to Walmart. Actually, I'm going to get in trouble because it might sound like I'm a pedophile or something. But I go to Walmart with my kids, and we'll hang out the gaming session, and I'll just start talking to kids. What do you like to do for fun? Oh, games. What games do you like to play? Oh, Call of Duty. What else do you like to do? Oh, just Call of Duty. See, so their minds become assessed. So what happens with a gamer is that they try to talk about the game to other people who don't play games. And I can tell you from my personal experiences, when I used to play Ultima Online, I used to make like these little arrows, virtual arrows, and I would tell my wife, oh, honey, I just made these virtual arrows. And she goes, I'm not interested in your virtual arrow, honey. I'm like, oh, but it's so cool. Let me tell you about this again. You know? So you always look for the opportunity to inject that in. But I think if you look at screening, you know, with a child, if you ask them for the questionnaires, how's your schoolwork doing? Have you given up your schoolwork because of screen time? Are you not doing your chores because of screen time? I mean, these are just kind of like the, you know, the eye-opener kind of questions for alcoholics. It's just for gamers.
Got it. And I do want to hear from the public, too, before we move on. And I'm going to give everybody a chance to have concluding remarks. Ben.
Sorry, quick question. You mentioned a couple times socially positive games. What would you say is a socially positive game? And how does that differ from Call of Duty?
Well, I think that Call of Duty is a violent game. So you have to look at the entertainment industry and let them rate the game, and then the parents need to follow. So an M-only game, don't let your 13. I think social games are good, like, building games, puzzle games. Very powerful. There's an AIDS protein that gamers actually solved how the protein should fold. The gamers were able to do that where computers couldn't. But here's the thing. It's all about moderation. Okay? So even water, too much of water becomes deadly. If you drink too much water, you will die from hyponatremia, and your brain will swell, and you will have a massive headache. So you have to have balance in your life.
Thank you. Mayor Gibbs.
Thank you, Dr. Doan. That was a pretty informative presentation and delivered with a little fire in the belly. I wrote down a number of things that you said, but there was a couple words that I circled. The first two were purpose and challenge. And then the last two that I circled were parental engagement. To me, it really gets back to, while there are a lot of organizations, influences in your life from the time that you're the youngest child, it's kind of up to your parents to exercise some control over you. So I'm looking for the advice that you would give to new parents of a very young child to put it in a palatable way to say, there are things that you have to look out for as your child is growing. And this is something new that we've never really had to deal with before. So what would you say to those young parents?
I would say resist the peer pressure and say no. Did you know that the executives of gaming companies and Yahoo and Google are sending their kids to technology-free schools until they're 18, but they push the digital crack on our public schools? Check that. Search that on the Wall Street Journal. So my question is, if it doesn't enhance the child's life, say no. My son does not have a smartphone. He has one of those little Walmart, monthly phone things. So that means if he doesn't behave 1 month, I don't pay for his phone card. Be a parent. I have a parent who gives an iPad to their 3-year-old daughter, knowing what my book says. And the daughter learned how to speak foreign language. But then she found YouTube cartoons. She sleeps with her iPad watching cartoons until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Now when they try to take it away, she kicks them, and they won't have enough courage to take it away because it's too hard. So my advice to new parents is that being a parent is hard, but you're not alone. It takes a village to raise a child.
Other questions? This end? Any questions down on this end? Oh, there you go. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Doan. When you say everything in moderation, obviously we all can resonate with that, but what is moderation for a child that's in school, K through 12? What is moderation?
1 hour total a day. That's what the pediatric association has actually recommended. Screen time, TV, and video games, 1 hour a day. But the average U.S. child gets over 40 hours a week because it's too easy. So lately, I just cut cable because I got sick and tired coming home, and I wrote this book, and my whole family's watching cable. So now I cut cable. We have no cable TV. So their only source of information is from me. No, just joking.
Other questions? Do we see any others? Yes, sir. Mark.
Just one question. You're in favor of, in these violent games, just automatic cutoff and deal with the consequences after that, basically, then?
Oh, yeah. My son, okay, so this is how I know my son was addicted. Because, being a gamer, and I had the same problems with what you're asking, because I wanted to love I wanted to have my son feel he's loved, because I already neglected him when he's younger. So I knew there was a problem when I woke up one morning, and he was up at 4 o'clock in the morning getting his Call of Duty fix in. Okay, this kid sleeps till 10 a.m. if I don't wake him up, right? He sleeps in and misses first period sometimes. We were on truancy as parents because he was missing his first period, right? But he would get up at 4 a.m. to get his Call of Duty fixed. And I said, son, you have a soccer tournament. What are you doing? He goes, Dad, I got to get my 3 hours in before this weekend because there's no way I can get it in later. So we cut it off. He wished his mom was going to be dead. He was angry. But guess what? Within a couple weeks, he goes through withdrawals, sucks it up. I taught him how to sell all his games on eBay. So I gave him half the proceeds, and we donated the other half to Liz Woolley's cause at Online Games Anonymous. And then what happened was miraculous. He started playing soccer more. He started working out. He actually cleaned out my car without me asking him. It was amazing.
Other questions? Any on this end? Any on this end? Okay, quick question. How many speakers do we have? Only 2. I suppose there's going to be a few more, and I'd like you to fill out a speaker slip if you can, but let's take the next 10 minutes. Go ahead and bring them to me, Betsy, real quick. And I'm going to let the public come to the podium, and because I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. When you come to the podium, if you can just keep your comment to 1 minute if you can. I mean, I'd want to listen to everybody. If you have to go a little over, that's cool. We're kind of informal. But why don't we just have, rather than call, because I only have 2 here, how many people by hands do we have who want to say something? Okay. So I see about 3. Okay. Why don't we then call them by name, and if anybody else wants to talk, we'll have you come up. How about Raymond Cameron? Raymond, come on up, sir. Why don't you go ahead and take 2 minutes, tell us what's on your mind, and what you think we should do, and some comments.
I'm just coming here today to introduce the Southwest Riverside County chapter of CAMP, which is the local licensed marriage and family therapists. We've kind of discovered this task force. We're probably late to this task force. So we wanted to let you all know that we are here to help. We are all mental health professionals licensed in the county with various specialties, including addiction, gaming, parenting issues, and helping people manage their time. So that was what I came to say, and let you know that we are here for you if you would like to work with us, if you would like us to work with you. We are available, and our website is easy to find. You just Google Southwest Riverside County Camped, and we will come right up.
Make sure you get that information to my assistant, Betsy, and when we get our website up, we'll put it up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And Daniel Hunt. Hi, Daniel.
How you guys doing?
Real well, thank you.
Good. I'm Daniel. I'm a CEO of a tech company. I love technology. Steve knows what I'm talking about. And I used to be a professional video gamer. I would practice 14 to 16 hours a day, and I played Counter-Strike, so it's a little older game. It was on the computer. But I actually got paid to play, and that was my dream. I used to play sports before I got into gaming, and I ended up making a couple $1,000 a month playing video games, and I thought, this is the best thing in the world, to live at my mom's house and play video games. Turns out it's not the best thing in the world, by the way. I gained 90 pounds over that 2 years, and I'm still struggling with health issues because I wouldn't take care of myself. I lost my job. I ended up actually being homeless. And but I could vouch for what Dr. Doan said. It is a dopamine thing. It was a magnetic pull to play because I was really good at it. And it's fun. And I was really good at it. And there's something great about being the best at something. And when you can't be the best in real life, it's a great substitute to be the best online. And one of the things that the video game companies do is they do leaderboards. And they do them globally. You can see how good you are in the nation. You can see how good you are against the world. And there's something about chasing that #1 spot. Now, once I ended up losing everything, then I got to really learn the good way, the hard way, the way that people can't take it from me. Ended up being a pastor for 9 years, youth pastor up in Olympia, Washington. I'll tell you just in my last 30 seconds here, we had about 200 kids in our youth ministry, and at least 60 of them struggled with technology addiction. I mean, a lot of the stories are pretty extreme that Andy was sharing with us, but they're not that abnormal. We had to call a lockdown. A girl wanted to take her own life because she posted a picture of herself to hotornot.com, a place where you can post a picture and people will tell you if you're hot or if you're not. And people told her she wasn't hot, and she wanted to take her life. I got a call in 2010. A family took away a computer, and the son was trying to starve himself to death because he wanted his computer back. And it goes on and on, stories and stories. I actually started documenting it because I thought it was so interesting because I myself had that addiction. But want to say this, the kids that get so desperate, it's not because they're brats or they love games so much. It's not about games. It's about what the game gives them. It's connection. It's honor. The counterfeit, the ugly counterfeit is importance. But what they really crave is value. And it's what they don't get in real life that they can get so easily online. So however you choose to tackle this, make sure you address the need, not just the substitute. It's the need. If we give them the need, if we are able to help fulfill the need, then the substitute is so much less appealing. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have more speakers, Betsy? Okay. Thank you. You can give me the other one if you have it. Rex Robertson. Hi, Rex.
I want to say thank you very much. I'm Rex Robertson. Thank you very much. You're spot on that presentation. As Simon Cowell would say, you were absolutely fantastic. I'm just going to give you a very quick background. I'm the video guy for the Chaparral Pumas football team, and I have been for 8 years. I coached Murrieta Valley Pop Warner, Temecula Valley Pop Warner, and I think Dr. Doan would agree that means I'm maybe a couple of levels, 3 inside the club, further than maybe everyone here because of that subgroup, which is boys between the ages of 12 and 20. So that's why I'm going to qualify this statement. This presentation was absolutely damning, but it is my unshakable belief that this is way worse than even what Dr. Doan presented, because I'm inside that club. I'm treated in a way kind of like a friend buddy. My challenge to you guys would be, and I could do this at Chaparral, but this is bigger than Chaparral, someone needs to issue a challenge. Finally, I'll say this. With 25 years at HP, I found out if you want to improve something, measure it. So my straw dog idea, my raw idea for you guys to chew on is someone needs to issue a challenge to these kids to say, take a month off and then evaluate yourself. I'm convinced that what Mr. Doan presented would be true for most of these kids, and they'll get active again. My only other comment really quickly would be that my wife and I are having a knockdown, drag-out, nasty battle about this because she, in your presentation, is this person that doesn't want to believe it. How can I get her to believe it? How can I get her to realize what we already know? She's a total skeptic. I desperately need help with that. Do you have any ideas?
I need help with that too. That's what I'm fighting. That's what I'm fighting against.
Right, so if the task force issued a challenge on Facebook or some other electronic public medium that says if you think you have a problem, you probably do, on this date we're going to challenge you to shut down Facebook and the video games completely, maybe Facebook dialed down. Look at that idea, consider it, maybe, that's just my raw idea. You'll have some other ideas. And then we need to collect the data from the kids afterwards. I don't have a skill in doing that. But I can tell you if we come up with something and you need somebody to put some comments from these kids after the 4 weeks or possibly 8 weeks, I'll be glad to film that for you and give it to your website guy. So that's my idea. I really appreciate everyone being here. And Professor Doan, I really enjoyed your presentation. It was phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Betsy. Okay, and Larry Cooley.
The opportunity, and I want to thank you personally for a great presentation. That was quite inspiring. I'm here with my friend Rex. We both have teenage sons that grew up together, and we kind of been strategizing how we could, deal with this dilemma we have about getting our kids to focus on things that are important and set their priorities right. Especially as I see my son's grades slipping, and you kind of let things go a little too far, and then you kind of have to kind of pull the rein in, and that's kind of what we're dealing with now. My biggest challenge, and it's mostly just a question I wanted to ask you, as with any addiction, there's always that kind of frame of denial. And in the realm of video gaming, what would you describe an addiction? You know, like Rex, I think a lot of people, you know, and spouses and everything, oh, he's not addicted, you know, and this, you know, and you don't want to be confrontational with your child. You don't want to, turn them off, you know, especially when they're teenagers. You know, that's kind of the thing. Well, you know, I could pull in the ring and say, okay, no more video gaming. But you say 1 hour, is that 1 hour every day, or is that just on weekends, or and what would you constitute as an addiction?
So if the child's addicted, I would recommend complete abstinence. If your child's addicted to alcohol, would you give them alcohol?
No.
Yeah. So you really have to treat it like that. And if you go to my website called hookedongames.com and go under the survey section, I posted what Dr. Douglas Gentile used for his research, that national study. And what he did was he took pathological gaming questions, which is the 11-point question, vetted by the American Psychiatric Association. He changed gambling to video games. So what it says is that, is your video gaming affecting your work? Is your video gaming affecting your chores? Have you ever talked about video gaming when other people are not interested in video gaming? When you're not video gaming, are you studying about video gaming on YouTube and magazines and other stuff? Have you ever stolen money to buy a video game? Have you ever, you know, and so on and so on. If they answer 6 of the 11 positive, they have a problem.
Yeah.
And if once they have a problem, then I would say hook up into local programs that are free. We have the Teen Landing Program at Rancho Community Church, which are a 12-step program that the teenagers walk through with Andy McIntosh and the leaders there that all had addictions themselves, drug, alcohol, and other issues. But, you know, as you saw from my talk, it really doesn't matter what the addiction is. It's all about the emotional baggage. See, we just tend to pick the ritual that gives us the dopamine rush that we desire. But really, when it comes down to it, it's fixing that hurt inside that can then resolve the addiction. So every one of us have different types of hurts. And it's just a matter of, you know, peeling back the onion and finding out what that is.
Right. So then gaming then fills a void in the life of a child.
Oh, yeah.
And whether, you know, it's the imbalance at school or whatever. And then, like I said, when they get older, then they can grow out of that and into something else that's even, you know, perhaps more destructive. So
correct.
That website might be good looking. I'm still concerned that the son will probably just, you know, in the denial factor would say, no, you know, I'm not, you know. And
well, an addict like me only realized I was an addict when I hit bottom. Remember, after all that gaming, I had carpal tunnel and you know, all these other problems, medical problems. I was losing my career, my marriage. That's when I finally did something about it. So unfortunately, the addiction is not your battle to fight; it's your son's. The unfortunate part, I know the burden. I feel your pain as a parent that we ignorantly let this thing into our family. So let me ask you this question, you know, for everyone here. What if we all gave our kids alcohol at the age of 6? How many of our kids would have problems with alcoholism? See, we've been duped. We've been duped. We not that we've been lied to, but we've introduced something in our household without enough data. And now we think that every kid should have an iPhone at the age of 8. That kind of thing, right? Yeah. Because if they don't, they cry and they whine and whatever, we give it to them. But now we fed this addiction, now you carry that burden. But it's not your fault because you didn't know until now. Now, if you hear my lecture and you ignore it, and I think that goes back to the parent. And I think that if your kid goes bully some kid at school and that kid commits suicide, I think there should be legal ramifications. Let me repeat that. Legal ramifications for parents who feed this digital crack, ignore the data. There should be legal consequences.
Thank you both. A good exchange. Is there anybody else who quickly would like to come up and say something before the panel finishes with closing comments? Okay, good. I do have a quick question for you, Dr. Doan. You had mentioned to me that Adam Lanza and the Sandy Hook shooting exhibited all the, I guess, all the signs of someone who was an avid video gamer, but just played it out in real life. Quickly, just take a minute or two and expound on that.
You know, I can't really tell you all the data because what I extract from the news is from the news. I don't know what is real, what is not real. But what we do know about Adam Lanza is that he had thousands of dollars worth of video games in his home. He played in his basement in the dark. Before the shooting that he killed his mom, it was reportedly by certain news channels, and things are kind of like, piecemeal, right? That he was actually playing excessively by himself at home. And so he was just in the basement playing games all night long.
So when he went out to the school, did he exhibit the mythology in committing the murders that is similar to a video game?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what Mayor Nagar's saying is that none of the clips that he used were ever depleted. So what he did was he depleted half of them, emptied the clip, and made sure he had a full clip before he entered the room. See, as a gamer, you didn't have to worry about bullet conservation. What you want to do is get the most kills. To make sure you have the most kills, you want to make sure you have a full clip. So if I walk into a room, I have to make sure I have a full clip to empty it. So what he did was, it didn't matter how many bullets he had left, he just left that clip, put a new clip in. And that style is actually typical of how, these Call of Duty guys play.
Thank you.
And that was reported by the news, not.
Exactly. One last thing, you gave a very fascinating talk. Are you willing, if any one of these panel members here today wanted you to come out to their venue, their school, their council, are you, I know you're busy with your family, I know you're busy with your full-time job as a surgeon, are you willing to do anything like that?
I think this is an issue that's big enough, and my good friend Rich Zerpel, says I have the disease of doing. So I want to do, and I've actually been trying to do less. But if I'm called to do this, and I think that's worth, spending time, and if you want me to come to your organizations, I will be willing to do that, because I believe that really there's nobody like me that can represent three classes of people. What I mean by that is that I represent the medical professionals who are being made fun of, being bullied because they are treating a disease that doesn't exist. See, they're being accused of treating a disease for the sake of self-promotion or financial gain. I represent a group of parents who've been told that, the disease is not real, and also represent the addicts who need help. So I feel like with my credentials, I can actually help your community understand this much better. And I find that when I present to the kids, they can relate to me because I'm a gamer. So I speak in a language where they understand. So when I say I really want to kill somebody in these games, they know it because they can see it in my eyes. They see I'm a gamer. They see that that's kind of fun. Not that I want to, let's redact that statement. I don't want to kill anybody, but I'm just saying that when you're playing games and you have that killer instinct, they can relate to that. So it would be a great honor to present and to serve.
And is your information available in the book? I noticed you've left the copy of your book.
Oh, yes.
Here.
I gave all members of the task force a copy of my book, and so my contact is in there too.
Go ahead, Ms. Edwards. Go ahead, Ms. Edwards.
So as civic leaders and school board members, city council members, what would we take home from this today? What would be the product of this meeting? Would it be that we can know or admit that the problem exists and then try to provide resources for our residents and for the community so that they can take advantage of those resources if they feel their children have issues?
Correct. And I think what we need to do is start with educating that this is a real problem. Because what happens is we spend so much time on educating people about drugs and alcohol and even like pre-teen sex, right, or teenage sex, that we have ignored this issue because we don't recognize it as being a real problem. So treat it how I treat with my 6-year-old. I sit down with her and say, listen, this is what happened to Dad when I got addicted to video games. And embarrassingly, now her favorite bedtime story is that, Dad, can you tell me when Mom left you and tell me how you got so fat? So that's what she enjoys. But the reason why she enjoys that is because there's a story of a princess in there. When her mom sent me this book called How to Win Your Wife Back Before It's Too Late, there's a princess that is a 10-cow woman, that you treat somebody their 10-cow worth, like extremely valuable. They rise up and they're this beautiful person. So Emily sees herself, that little princess, this 10-cow princess. That's why she likes that story. But my point is that if you tell your kids, like I do, they actually make a choice, like they do with drugs and alcohol. And it starts with education.
Got it. Thank you. So info to contact you is in the book. Of course, the task force and our website. Betsy, you have all that information. If anybody wants Dr. Doan to come on out. Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is, I know at the end of our... I know at the end of our task force efforts, when we complete about a year from now, we're gonna compile all this information in a resource guide. But really, what do we do now? What does the panel want to do now? Obviously, we all want to assemble information. We all want to exchange information. And we also want to do something. So I want to hear from each and every panel member your thoughts, where we go from here on this topic, and just really start brainstorming. And I see, Steve, you wanted to go ahead and kick it off first. Go for it.
Sure. It's kind of interesting after hearing about all this, a lot of the things that Dr. Don was saying. You come to a point, if you've played games, where you recognize that you're no longer being productive, and you have to pull back from the gaming, put the controller down, and go to work. It's kind of interesting. I came in skeptical, really. I was afraid that this meeting was going to be almost like a book burning, but for video games, and it wasn't like that. But I found the information incredibly telling, and I think that we have an issue here where we have the paradox where business and schooling is moving increasingly online, where you're turning in your homework with emails, you're communicating or getting your assignments from Facebook, you're getting business through Facebook or text messages and whatnot. And so we have an incredibly challenging task before us to be able to go ahead and what I feel is educate the public about this. So my 2 cents, we do a Red Ribbon Week at the schools, Red Ribbon Week, to go ahead and acknowledge drug addiction. I think that might be a very, very good start for our local communities. With that, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You did change my mind on a lot of things.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Tim?
I'm a big fan of Celebrate Recovery, and I hear that you're participated in Celebrate Recovery. One thought I had was, having gone to a few of those meetings myself, it's not a place that kids would probably be too inclined to go. And I'm wondering if there's any resource in the area where kids would have a program similar to Celebrate Recovery that they could go to if they find themselves admitting some addiction.
Yeah, so Celebrate Recovery has the Celebrate Recovery, which is the adult program, but at Rancho Community Church, we also have the Teen Landing, which is the teen program, or teen version of Celebrate Recovery, that is managed by kids are 13 to 18 years old there. And so yes, the answer is yes, there's that resource. At Rancho Community Church. We meet on Thursday nights at 6:30 at Rancho Community Church. Here in Temecula on 79 South.
Thank you, Tim. Anything else? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a couple comments. I think one of the things so many of us that are on school boards are of an age that for us a video game was Pac-Man. So, this is a whole different world. And
no, it was Pong.
It was Pong, yeah. But I think that what I've learned today with our own school district, I'd like to go back and have our staff look at some of our students who are not doing well academically or maybe have behavioral issues and see just by talking to them how do video games play in their life. It'd be very interesting.
Great. Betsy, you're getting all this down? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Next up. So I do want to hear from everybody. Rita?
I'm a very proud grandmother of 9, all ages. So I originally went on Facebook to keep up with my grandchildren. And I'm kind of very old school. So when I go over to my daughter's or my son's house, we eat, we sit around the table, we talk, we communicate. So I've got 1 or 2 of them that like to go in their rooms and get on the computer and do games. So Granny's very insistent that when Granny comes, if we're going to play games, it's going to be at the table, it's going to be Monopoly or Scrabble or Uno. At first, they weren't so enthusiastic about it, but I let each of them beat me at checkers. And whoever could beat me at checkers got a few dollars extra in their allowance. So now they love to sit and play with Granny at the table. So I without hearing any of this, I just noticed that a couple of my grandchildren just loved to be isolated. And after we would eat, they would want to go in their rooms and get right back on those different games and the shooting and all of that stuff. So we had kind of one of those come to Jesus meetings where I was just very adamant that we are going to play games, but we're going to do it together, and we talk our way through it and have good food too, so.
Thank you, Rita. Who's next? Yeah, hi, Alan. All right, Alan Long, City of Marietta.
Thank you, Mayor. Extraordinary presentation for the part that I was here for. A couple comments. I think for this particular topic, there is a tremendous amount of awareness work that needs to be done to and let people know that this is real. How to identify it, maybe some simple steps or questions you can ask to find out if your child or someone you know meets the criteria, and then more importantly, how to deal with that. And I really appreciated what the other gentleman said about the need. And I think there's a gap in these people's lives, and it's being filled by video games. But this valley has so much to offer, and there are so many programs that they could get plugged into that's that next step, which leads me to the focus of this group. And I think the way I envision it is we're going to hear other presentations on other issues that our youth deal with. And I sort of envision the group, and I could be wrong, I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion, is this is a resource guide, sort of what CAD is to dispatch, where if people think they're alone, they're unaware of things, this has all of these issues and can direct them into the existing programs that exist in this valley. So that we don't recreate the wheel, so to speak, that we utilize what's already out there to the best of its ability. And if something's missing, maybe that's this panel's job, is to find an area that could address those issues. That's it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. Our school district, Marietta Valley, I'm really proud of us. We have, in spite of all the terrible budget cuts being inflicted upon us by the state of California, we have held on to our performing arts programs and our athletic programs and clubs and all of those activities that are proactive steps in preventing kids from becoming addicted to video games. If we can keep our kids busy in the community doing all these great things, then they just won't have the time to have these kind of problems. So I think as communities, we need to look at what we offer our kids, keep those opportunities out there, and like Alan said, if we could create a resource guide so that families would know where they can go for athletics or performing arts or choir activities or whatever. We have a lot of different resources in our communities through schools, through churches, through the city activities, and have that awareness out there. And also in Marietta, we have a parent center that offers various parent education programs. I don't know if other school districts have that, but that certainly is a great resource for parents in our community that could be replicated everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, sir. Forgive me, because some names I haven't learned yet. I can't see your name tag. Thank you.
Jerry Bowman from Menifee. As I said, I was a high school teacher and athletic coach for over 30 years. And I used that as a parent because what I noticed just empirically was that those students that were involved in school were the ones that were more successful. So I led my 3 daughters, and they range from 15 to 36, into either sports or clubs or whatever it is. And I think as a school board member, we have to really remember that those programs that Chris was just talking about are so important, because it's not every kid can play athletics. Not every kid can sing or be, in band, but whatever it is, there's clubs, there's all kinds of things that we have to make available, either through the schools or through the city. So I thank you for your presentation. It's kind of confirming. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Yes, Mark.
And bottom line is we've talked about a lot of good things. I think Rita kind of hit it right on the head, though. You're old school like me. It starts at home. We're the parents. We got to take the lead in everything we do. They watch us. They follow our lead. And if we're just sitting there and being passive about being parents, they're going to find other substitutes to fill their time. So it's going to have to start at home. I like your presentation because you got right to the heart on it. And thanks for coming out.
Great.
Michael
Yeah,
Vargas.
thank you, Mike. I should remember that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, thank you for letting me know that I just contributed to the delinquency of my 4 grandchildren. I think a lot of us parents, I'm a young grandfather, I'm 51, I have 4 grandkids, and it's simple to just give them a tablet, the DS games, and let them do their thing, not realizing what we're doing to them. Some of you already hit on it. Where we go from here, I think it is a good point, is both city and districts, school districts can go back. We need to share on the internet through emails what we are doing already. I personally don't know if we're doing anything at Val Verde. I know definitely on bullying, things of that nature, but there may be something we're already doing that we can share with everybody else. Menifee can share with us. We may have a lot of tools out there already, we don't even realize it. A couple of folks stepped up here from the community offering their program, so if we can share that amongst on all our emails, I think that'd be a good start.
Very good. Yes, sir, John.
Thank you, Dr. Doan, for your presentation this afternoon. I was wondering, you were mentioning a rubric that is being used to identify whether a child has a problem. Is that in your book here?
Yes, it's in the the book is actually a good resource. So the way I wrote the book is it's a personal account, but I use a medical scientific argument, and then I have chapters that talks about things to do. If your child is addicted to internet, you cut off the internet. You actually take the modem to work. You change the passcodes on the computer. All our computers at home are password protected, so we log in for them to do homework. It takes a little bit more trouble, but you have to be proactive. And the questionnaire is also in the book too.
Very good, thank you. Just on another item here, with regard to surveys, et cetera, I think most of our school districts do a Healthy Kids survey every year, and I'm sure we do things on cyberbullying and et cetera. I don't know that this particular issue is addressed, but I'm sure that if we could append some form of questionnaire on top of the Healthy Kids survey, as well as like through the parent centers, et cetera, because not only do we need to ask the kids, sometimes the kids will be forthright and say, yes, this is the issue, but the parents definitely will. So I think we need to survey both sets of individuals in order to get some form of data that we can work with, and then try to address the situation or the problem from that regard.
Thank you, John. And thank you. I can't, my eyes aren't that good.
That's
Crystal.
okay. It's Crystal Reese from San Jacinto.
Welcome.
I have 4 small children there, way younger than the gaming children at this point. I have recently realized that we have to be very careful about the cartoons that they watch, because some things are just not age appropriate for those younger children. So what we've done is find alternative cartoons, Christian cartoon channels that they can watch that are appropriate. And it's really nice when you see your children playing Jesus and helping somebody up to heaven with the angels and all of that. That's great. I think that this task force, we don't want to go out there and burn books. We don't want to go out there and burn video games. That's not what it's about. It's about helping these kids. And I think as a task force, we should provide positive options maybe for these kids that would be something, opposed to these violent games, that may be something positive that they could actually have. So maybe we need to compile a list of games that might be fun for them, that would be good for them to have. And maybe you might know some that you could get to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with probably about 100 professionals on an email chain who actually work with children, and this is their passion as well. I would recommend even going further and saying, well, these are pro-social games, but you remember, it's the isolation, right? It's the kid who goes in the corner, even plays a pro-social game like Tetris, could be problematic. So I love the fact that if we put down our foot and say, listen, this city, we want to have family time. So if you want to play Nintendo, we all play Nintendo. We tried that in our home. Guess what? We're so busy, we don't have time to get everybody together to play the Nintendo Wii. Guess what? It collects dust. It's when we use it as a babysitter, it becomes a problem. Really, it starts out with that.
Great. Who else? Julio? Yes.
I heard a lot about the old school, and I guess I represent the new school because I'm 27. But because my age group grew up in the age when all this stuff was happening, when Facebook started, when the iPhone came to be. One recommendation I wanted to make to the task force, and I don't know if it's feasible, that, and a challenge to the school board members here, is that they identify a few student leaders from their schools, and maybe we can make them honorary task force members, because that way they get the information and they relay it back to their peers. And because it's you school board members who have a direct finger on the school districts, and like most young people, you don't like being told what to do. You want to get the information on your own. And today's presentation was incredibly informative. And I think if young people were here, they'd go back with a lot to say, because I have a family member who I thought was just having fun, and it doesn't seem to be the case. But that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio.
So you don't remember Pong, Julio? Is that what you're telling me? Boop. 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 Boop.
Anybody else? Mr. Gibbs, I know you have a few things.
Actually, I don't remember Pong.
You too.
About the time that Pong came on the scene, which was probably around 1973-ish, thereabouts, I was still living life, so to speak, being shot at in Vietnam, over Vietnam. And maybe that really brings up a point that, you know, Marianne, you're involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and the word diversity of experience comes to mind, that we need to provide all our kids with outlets, with supervised outlets, with the diversity of experience. If a kid is turning to video games because life is not what he or she would hope it to be, then they need something else in their life. The thought occurs to me that the teachers are the first line of defense. Quite often, parents don't actually see what's going on, but teachers do. So with all the school districts, I would hope that we would be able to provide Dr. Doan's experiences to the school districts and let them decide what to do with that. One of the indictments I would make of the medical profession, particularly the psychiatric profession, is that when you talk about addiction, particularly with drugs or alcohol, there's this questioning, is there a gene that leads to susceptibility? And when I listened to the presentation here, what I heard was, this is brainwashing, pure and simple. If you start young enough with that child and you expose them, 14, 15 hours a day, they are brainwashed. Whether there was a susceptibility to begin with or not became irrelevant just by the exposure. So our kids have been brainwashed. And we as a society, we worry about a lot of things in our life, particularly in our national life. But if we as a society allow a generation of kids to grow up and they're not in the real world, what damage have we done to our society?
Great point. I have a couple of thoughts and a couple of comments. I have a 20-year-old daughter that is just finishing up here this week, finals for her third year in college. I remember when she was in the middle school years, she was doing very well. I've always had a marvelous relationship with her, really fantastic, very close. And we rewarded her by getting her own computer. It's a big deal. And we allowed it to be in her room, okay? And the thought that she could ever go wayward or that it would ever corrupt, quote unquote, corrupt her in any manner never crossed our mind. But this was the MySpace culture. How many people remember the MySpace culture? And pretty soon we started to see gradual changes in her. Somebody who was always happy and joyful became dour, sour, talking back to her mom, talking back to me. Next thing you know, a little lie here, a little lie there. Oh, I'll do my chore later, not doing the chore. All of these things were foreign to us. It never occurred that our daughter would even do that. It just was not part of her persona, but it became her persona. Pretty soon, as we would take her to school, I remember, a block away from school, she started complaining of just stomach pains, this anxiety. And it would happen every day, about a block before she got to school. We couldn't figure it out. And I know the way that we solved it before I had information like you've delivered tonight is we just just put it all together and just took the whole thing away and went through about 6 weeks of withdrawal, of yelling and screaming and kicking and fighting and what have you. And then after that, it all pretty much went back to normal. Of course, I would be remiss and say that, I would be remiss if I said it was all my daughter's fault. It was my fault, okay? And that was part of the whole thing. Oh, certainly, I guess like you told the gentleman here a minute ago, you know, he was responsible for allowing this addiction in his house. I was responsible for not only allowing it in the house, but putting it in a room and allowing her to close the door and let her do it hours and hours until it finally I had to undo that. And undoing it was very painful. But it was something that I knew we had to do, and we did it. And things went back to normal, and she's a wonderful, wonderful girl. Those that know me here know that I'm probably addicted to doing, like Mr. Doan. You know, I want to always come away from something doing something, and we have assembled all of these leaders here. So I think I've made a list of some things that I've heard, and I'm going to throw them out to the task force to see if the task force concurs. I think we all agree and know that we're going to put together a resource guide at the end of this. Video game addiction will be part of it, and I think that we both, or we all understand that we need to exchange information via email and compile that. That way we're not duplicating. So Betsy, we'll compile all that, and we'll put it together, and we'll be the resource for it. We'll also start to be putting some of this online. But the real key is we need to get it into the hands of our constituents and into the hands of those that need it. I really like what some of you mentioned. Crystal, you mentioned it, and I think, Steve, you mentioned it. You know, we're not here, I mean, we don't want government intrusion in people's lives. That's not what we're about. We don't want to sit here and say, don't play this game, play that game. But what we do want to do, I believe, is empower parents, okay? That's what we want to do, or make things aware to people that they may not be aware of. I guess that's our task. One of the speakers said something very interesting, and why I wouldn't say this is our final task of doing it, but I would love to see a regional take the day off day. I mean, and literally get all of our organizations. And it's not the taking the day off. It's the publicity behind doing it. It's the publicity behind all of our organizations getting together and saying, as a region, there's such a thing as video gaming addiction, and we want to bring awareness to it. So we're going to pick a day, and we're all going to just say this is the day, and we're going to do it. And that helps get the word out. So if the group was amiable, we can coordinate that. Obviously, you have to take that all back to your respective boards and things of that. None of us can bind our boards without those 3 votes. But I'm seeing nodded heads, so I think there's a consensus there. I think maybe, if the board's amiable again, literature about video gaming addiction and its consequences is really not out there. It's not really known. People aren't saying things like we do with drugs. I mean, we see public service announcements, hey, don't take crack. Hey, you know what, when it comes to pot, say no. Everybody knows those things. But nothing, absolutely nothing is done regarding video gaming. But if you Google it, and I challenge everybody, because Dr. Doan's challenged me, and start looking at some YouTube videos. There's some wicked YouTube videos out there of kids being denied this online crack, as you put it. And so this is a real thing. So maybe there's some public service type of literature that we can get into the hands of the parents through the cities and through the schools. Now, I know you folks at the schools need to, again, run them through your boards and through your superintendents. But to the school board members, is that something that we can do? Is that something that's viable? Is that possible? Again, with full acknowledgement, you can't bind your boards. But if that's possible, then Dr. Doan, I need you to put something together for this board that is consumable, that we can get to the group, that the school board members can approve. Maybe you've got 2 or 3 versions, and that we can get into the hands of the school board members, who can get them into the hands of the parents.
Something that's a little more simplified and understandable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like a brief presentation.
Exactly. Okay, Doc? And then again, you guys will approve
During
it.
your free time, of course.
We talked about the resource guide. We talked about what we're doing already. And then I think we've already said this. actually, Steve Manos, you brought it up, was the red ribbon aspect, and I don't know how that would work, or whether it's possible, school board members. Is that something that could be done, or is there just one more thing you have to do during the school year?
It's something that the Board of Education can adopt, a resolution. Of course, it'd have to be a different color, because red ribbon's already taken up, but, you know. But surely it's something every district, we can look at it together here.
Or you could even include that in your Red Ribbon Week as part of its, its addiction.
They know the drugs,
Yeah,
they know the...
right.
Can I ask the school board members to take the pulse of your district to see if that's possible, and then report back to this board? Just via email is fine. And is that okay? Is that something? Okay. And again, some things will work in some districts, other areas, I mean, some of your districts are so strapped for cash, one more program, may just be a breaker. That we understand. But in other areas, you're well equipped to implement this. So however it works specifically to you guys, I think is appropriate. And then lastly, I really like our collaboration as a region, and real important is collaboration between the cities and the school districts. And whatever that collaboration is, and I'm going to finish with this. I think I'll verbalize something that we do here in Temecula that I think everybody in their cities kind of adapts. And that was recently when we did the autism task force, we identified that since 1 in 50 children are being diagnosed with autism, that whether we liked it or not, or whether autism was our public policy thing in our city, it was a health epidemic that one way or the other we're going to have to deal with, whether we deal with it now or whether we deal with it when they become adults and they need housing and they need schooling or gainful employment. And the same thing seems to be applying here. We know that it's a problem. The question is, how do we do it? How do we collaborate and get information in each other's hands, so that if we could prevent a Sandy Hook? And I don't know if we'll ever know if we're successful. I guess if we're successful, nothing happens, and that's a good thing. Okay. Or we'll get some positive feedback that, my kid was addicted to video games, but, we heard the literature, we saw Dr. Doan's presentation, and it really helped us get help. That's another way. So with that, if there's any other closing comments by any of the panel members, we're a little over. I endeavored to keep us at 6 o'clock. I'm so sorry, but it was important. I think when we get together again, everybody will know each other and we can dispense with all the preamble and preliminary and stay on a 2-hour track. So unless there's anything else, by a show of hands, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Are we good? All right. Then we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.